Bluebird K7 is the third of the Bluebird boats that the Campbell family built. She was a jet hydroplane and was built in 1955 when she actually went to Ullswater and broke the world water speed record with a speed, I think, of 202 miles an hour, if I remember correctly. Obviously a fantastic craft, and you know, it had proved that. It had been from 1955 to 1967, it had made 4, 5, 6, I think, six records. And I suppose that you began to think that nothing could go wrong.
Bluebird K7 was actually quite innovative. She was the first all-metal water speed record boat, and she was designed to be powered by a jet engine, originally a Beryl engine, and then in 1966 that was replaced with the Orpheus engine. Reduce hydrodynamic drag as far as possible and boost aerodynamic lift as much as possible, but still making her safe on the water, and it's a very delicate balance to achieve.
I mean, it's part of the nation's history. It's particularly sort of mechanical engineering things, and for what, 55 to 66, 67, 12 years, you know, that boat was actually quite untouchable. Nobody came anywhere near building a craft that could challenge it.
Here we are in Campbell's, near Campbell's grave. An extremely brave man, a legend in his lifetime, and particularly in this village. Campbell raced many times on Coniston Water, broke many records. His boat, K7, presently being restored. He had a real love affair with that boat. It was the first boat to go 200 miles an hour on Ullswater. He then brought it to Coniston, where he broke records right through the late 50s and early 60s. And he really believed that it could go 300 miles an hour, so he changed the engine on the boat, and he really went for the 300 miles an hour.
My first sort of memories of the Campbell people, I was about 5 years old, and he was kind of, I had to call him Mr. Campbell and talk to him properly, otherwise I would have been in serious trouble with my parents. As I grew older, I began, you know, obviously that relationship changed, and by the time I went to work for them in 1967, 66, 67, you know, I called him the skipper like everybody else did.
It was soon after dawn that Bluebird was got ready for the record attempt. There was little wind, the water was smooth. The evening before, Donald Campbell drew the ace and queen of spades, the deadly shadow of remorseless fate. He was a superstitious man. Dedicated, his mission in life coming before everything. The Orpheus jet was easily capable of driving Bluebird at 300 miles an hour. British, the record had to remain.
For a long time, people in the village didn't really like to talk about it, and they certainly didn't like to sort of ride on the back of the accident and use it as a publicity thing, because out of sheer respect for Donald.
Donald Campbell's mother, Sir Malcolm's wife, Lady Campbell, his sister, Jean Wales, and his widow, Tonya Byrne Campbell, decided that the sensible thing to do was to treat the crash site as a grave. Bluebird was never lost. People knew exactly where she crashed, but I think they were able to send other searchers to the wrong part of the lake, actually, quite skillfully. When Bill Smith arrived, he had a a special barge with a roving underwater vehicle with lights and cameras aboard, and everybody realised that Bluebird wouldn't stay hidden. Gina Campbell, Donald Campbell's daughter, was told about this, and they had a discussion about it, and her prime concern was actually to find her father's remains so that he could be given a proper burial, because she said the lake was too big to hug. So she told Bill Smith that he could get on with it, so long as you find my dad so I can put him somewhere warm.
Brought it up in 2001. Bill probably found it the year before. On a personal level, I'd always felt that it would be an awful shame for this thing to lay on the bottom of the lake and just rot away, considering what it had achieved. I always felt that its place was certainly in a museum somewhere where people could see it and admire it. And the other side of it was that, yes, I felt it was right to reconstruct it and rebuild it because it looked horrific as it was. It was as it was when it came out of the lake. It was not really a true. It wasn't like the Bluebird should look. So to rebuild it, I felt was the correct thing to do.
We just had to do it. We just set ourselves a goal. We wanted to lift the wreck, and we've done it. And we've done it, I'm pleased to say, with the dignity and respect that it deserved.
It became apparent that the stern two-thirds of Bluebird was actually in fairly sound condition, because the engine, the Orpheus engine, had acted as a sacrificial anode, and the rest of the metal wasn't too badly corroded. So Bill recovered that, and he recovered many, many smaller pieces of the nose and cockpit area. And after examination, it was considered possible to conserve the original fabric and rebuild the boat.
Bill Smith is doing an incredible job on rebuilding this boat, using as much as of the original craft as he can, and I think he's using well over 90%. When you start a little job, you can never say, oh, it's going to take 10 minutes. It might take 10 days, it might take 10 weeks, I suspect, if something has to go away to be engineered again. And Bill said, he said to me, don't ask me when it's going to be ready. He said, but if you can tell me when this bit I'm working on at the very moment, when that will be back in the boat and back in place, then I'll tell you when the boat will be finished.
The dream is to run low-speed engineering proving trials on Coniston Water to validate the quality of the work that Bill and his team of volunteers have done, and to give lots of people who weren't born in 1967 or didn't even see Bluebird in the 50s the opportunity to see a boat that did break 7 world water speed records. People remember the crash, but up to that moment she was the most successful ever record vehicle.
After the boat was recovered, I think people began to realise, in fact, that by publicising it, you were also publicising the legacy and the achievements of the Campbell family. You were helping to keep the story alive, basically. I don't think anybody quite realised this beforehand. Most of her records were made on Coniston. Donald, as you may know, is buried in Coniston, because his body was recovered also shortly after they recovered the Bluebird. He was able to have a proper burial, and he's buried in the cemetery here in Coniston. And one of the things that he used to say was that the skipper and the boat should always stay together. Whether this is some premonition he may have had about what was possible and what might happen, I don't know. So with Bluebird coming back to Coniston, apart from the fact it's where she has made most of her records, Donald, who we refer to as the skipper, is buried close by in the village cemetery, so we are honouring his wish in many ways.